Hey guys, M here from Transformers and Video Games, and welcome back to the channel. This is part 4 of my G1 Transformers and Pre-Transformers collection series. So sit back and enjoy, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Hey folks, if you're a fan of vintage Transformers, then you may also want to check out parts 1, 2, and 3 of my G1 Transformers collection series. And if you do, be sure to give the videos a like. It really helps out smaller channels like mine. If you saw my Transformers collection room, IKEA Billy bookcase display video from about a year ago, then you will have seen some of the figures from this video already, but even if you have seen it, there are plenty of other figures here that I haven't shown on my channel yet, so grab yourself a frosty beverage, sit back and enjoy. Let's start off with some of the larger boxed figures on top of my shelves. First off, we have Trypticon, which according to the price tag originally cost $49.98 at a store called Bradley's. Next is Scorponok. The figure itself is in terrific condition, but the box was ripped up in several places, which pretty much allowed me to get it for approximately what I would have paid for a loose specimen. Space Tank is a vintage knockoff of the pre-Transformers version of the Mechabot figure that was put out by a company called Toy Box and later licensed to Hasbro and Takara to release as Omega Supreme under the Transformers branding. And speaking of Omega Supreme, here's a Canadian box specimen that I picked up on Kijiji a few years ago for only $100. This is pretty much a steal as far as I'm concerned. Anybody not familiar with Kijiji, it's pretty much the same thing as Craigslist in the United States. Next we have my Canadian G1 Stunicons Giftset. Canadian boxed variants haven't been knocked off yet, so this is one way to ensure that you're buying the real deal. Menasor's French-Canadian name is Confusio, which I honestly think is a bit of an unusual translation. Next to that on the right, I have 4 out of the 5 Takara individually boxed Stunicons figures, which are mint and sealed box. The only one I'm missing here is Motormaster. And below that are 4 out of the 6 figures that form a combiner called Landcross, along with my world's smallest G1 Transformers Megatron, which I've also reviewed on my channel. Be sure to check it out and let me know what you think. On my next shelf, we have my Canadian boxed variant of G1 Soundwave, which cost $19.96, according to the Woolco price tag. Next to that is my pre-Transformers Blaster figure, which came out in a very different color scheme than I think most of us are used to seeing, along with a couple of G1 cassettes on top of the box. I know that there's been an age-old debate about which one is Rumble and which one is Frenzy. I recognize that on the cartoon, the blue one is Rumble, but if the toys came out first and the cartoon was meant to advertise the toys, do we go by the name in the cartoon or the name on the packaging for the toys? On the left side, I also have a very clean American box specimen of Soundwave, which I was happy to add to my collection a couple of years ago. On the next shelf is my Canadian G1 Pepsi Optimus Prime. I was very fortunate to buy this off of eBay a couple of years ago for essentially the same price as what a regular boxed G1 Optimus Prime would cost. Next to that is a mint and sealed box Ultra Magnus. I think that most people already know that there are several different variants of Ultra Magnus that were produced. A sealed specimen is very desired by collectors, but unfortunately the particular variant that I have is the least desirable version, where they cut corners in just about every respect. Next we'll take a look at some of my boxed G1 Autobot cars on the next shelves. For starters, we've got Ratchet, which cost $11.99 from Woolco at the time. Then we've got Wheeljack. His French-Canadian name was Invento, which I think kind of makes sense if you consider the character, at least on the G1 cartoon. Then we've got Jazz, which cost $11.98. Now, unfortunately, I don't know where Jazz was purchased, just because the price tag on there is just a generic sticker. Now, regrettably, I went through a phase of carefully removing the price tags from many of my vintage boxes a few years ago, but have since stopped doing that to preserve some of the history of where these toys were purchased, since over 35 years later, many of these stores no longer exist. Even though I never had G1 tracks as a kid, it's a figure that I always wanted. Something about the look of the old Corvette Stingray always made me wanted to play with this toy. At least now as an adult collector, although I don't play with my toys, I'm fortunate enough to have been able to add a pretty nice specimen to my collection. Down below, I've got G1 Hound, which was purchased from a store called Toys and Wheels here in Canada for $14.99. Now, I'm not sure where there were Toys and Wheels stores. I don't think we had them here in Ontario, but certainly if anybody knows, leave me a comment in the comment section. There was a time when I was trying to collect a complete run of Canadian variant boxed Autobot cars, but the prices have crept up way too high over the years, and my priorities have since changed as a collector. Here's a nice shot of the 9 Autobot cars that I currently have on display at the moment. Stay tuned for further collection videos, because I plan on showing other Autobot cars in my collection. Now we'll move along to my next shelf. If I'm not mistaken, in part 1 of my G1 Transformers collection series, I showed a specimen of the Japanese Takara Bruticus gift set. The one that I have here is the Italian gig variant, which you can tell by the larger sized box, the Italian writing on the box, and the fact that his name here is Multiforce. I've always really loved G1 combiners. Like many kids at the time, I thought that they were really cool ever since seeing them for the first time in the original 80s cartoon. Now just to the left of Bruticus, or in this case Multiforce, we've got some of my G1 Insecticons. On top here we've got Bombshell. Underneath that we've got Kickback, who is always my favorite G1 Insecticon toy. And then at the bottom we have Shrapnel. Now I do think it's a bit of a shame that over the years Hasbro seems to have lost the rights to use their actual names. I've just noticed that with every G1 reissue that comes out, the names are a little bit different. Now for anybody looking to start a boxed G1 collection, I think Insecticons are a nice way to get started. They look great, they are fairly common and still relatively affordable on the secondary market. Have a look on eBay or ideally at your local toy conventions and you'll see what I'm talking about. I recently had somebody ask me why I don't collect Masterpiece Transformers figures when they're the best representations of the characters that we've ever received. And my answer to that is, I do collect them. Let's take a look at what's behind the front row of figures that I have on display here, just on the top shelf of my Billy bookcase. Alright, now that we've got that front row of G1 figures out of the way, we can take a look at what I have in storage and behind here. Now most of these figures are several years old at this point. One figure that we're approaching here may be a bit of a surprise to some people that I have it, but this is of course Beast Wars Masterpiece Cheetor. I actually watched the Beast Wars cartoon about a year ago, and surprisingly I enjoyed it, so I wanted a couple of cool representations from the line, so I ended up getting Cheetor and Optimus Primal. Now most of these other figures again are old, but this is just a little peek at some of the Masterpiece figures that I have in my collection. Alright guys, thank you very much for checking out part 4 of my G1 Transformers collection series. Again, if you're a fan of vintage Transformers, then you may also want to check out parts 1, 2, and 3 of the series. If you do check them out, be sure to give the video a like. Again, it really helps out smaller channels like mine. Anyways, thanks again for watching everybody. Take care.